someone like Barack Obama, okay, if 50% to 60% of Americans believe in everything on his platform, if you don't believe it, if you're a right-winger, I'm not suggesting that you just roll over. I believe in democracy, which means inclusion. But the notion that he is a pariah because he doesn't reaffirm what you already believe, when 50 to 60% of the American people believe in everything that he says and does, is absurd. If you're a left-winger who sees a George H.W. Bush as a pariah, I'm a left-winger, and I'm not going to just roll over and support his platform. But he is a normal person that has a place at the table, and I'm going to do what I can as an activist to present our side and allow all of us as free people in a democracy to vote. And hopefully the results are a reflection of the American people. But we live in a society where six out of the last 7 presidential elections, the American people have not voted for the right wing. But the right wing, who have not reflected the majority of the American voice, are great at consolidating power. And so we're not about the table anymore. It's not, okay, this President Clinton is the most popular president of our lifetimes. What can we do to regroup? What self-introspection might we do? How might we better reach the hearts and minds of Americans so that they may freely vote on it? No. Entrapment so that we can impeach him and push out the result of 2 fair elections. And while we're able to consolidate power, okay, the right wing will gerrymander so that in congressional districts, even if there are more Democrats that vote, the right wing gets more seats in Congress. Indignation, obviously, does not determine the intrinsic truth of a matter. And Fox News is the outlet that started the ascent of indignation and feelings determining your sense of intrinsic truth. And if you live in a society that going on 2 decades now, okay, lives on indignation, then both sides are no longer going to have relationship to something called the truth. George H.W. Bush, I don't agree with him. But he's a normal person that represents a different political party than me and different political values than me. So I believe in democracy, which means that I believe in your freedom, even if I don't agree with your politics, and you should believe in my freedom. And we come together and have what's called a free election. And in the free election, George H.W. Bush lost, okay? Bill Clinton becomes the most popular president in anyone's lifetime who's living, okay? No, you shouldn't just roll over if you're a right wing. You should participate in the political process. But what happens is, come Clinton's second term, instead of engaging the actual democratic process, what the right wing does is they find what was a real estate deal that he did when he was governor that may have something shady going on. Okay, I'm not above suggesting that's possible. In fact, you want to know how altruistic we are. The Democrats were the ones that said nothing is there, so yes, appoint an independent counsel. You're not going to let it go, so fine. We believe in democracy. You have your independent counsel, investigate us. And the Republicans did not find anything. Okay, but instead of closing up shop on that issue, they kept the investigation open so that anything by which they may find him prosecutable, okay, is available, readily available to get him to be prosecuted by. And that was an extramarital affair. If you want to tell me, like Joe Scarborough, the Republican representative who is now an MSNBC host, who voted for impeachment, if you're like him and you're telling me sex doesn't matter, okay, but the president cannot be allowed to lie under oath. Okay, I can't argue with you that he lied about a blowjob and the president should not be allowed to lie. But I know what's really going on. Instead of saying, damn, the American people clearly want this guy. He has the highest approval rating in history. He was elected twice. How are we going to regroup and get our foothold in the democratic process? No, we're going to ask him about an affair. We know he's going to lie. And then we're going to prosecute him for having lied about a consensual blowjob. Okay, step one in the right wing's intolerance of the democratic process. Step two, someone who the American people did not choose, George W. Bush, is appointed president by the Supreme Court, the right-wing led Supreme Court, who voted against right-wing values by not allowing Florida to recount their votes. They betrayed their own values, right-wing values. To get a right-winger elected president. Okay, fine, that was all legal. Okay, that was all legal. But now during the George W. Bush presidential administration, state houses, Republican state houses, redistrict voting districts for Congress in such a jigsaw puzzle way that they group all the Democrats in the state into this crazy shaped single district. While if you're in a big state, you may have 3 or 4 other districts that you're allowing all the Republicans to occupy. So that means that even if more Democrats voted in the state, they're only going to get 1 seat because of the way you shape that district, while the Republicans get the other 3, 4. They get 4 sent to Congress in that state, and Democrats only get 1, even though that's not the will of the people. So while left-wingers today are arguing that enslaved people are not slaves, which is clearly a false statement, the right wing isn't caught in these ridiculous linguistic squabbles. They're consolidating power in a way that's undemocratic. Step 3, okay, someone like Barack Obama, it's no surprise that Democrats want universal health care. It's only been something they've wanted for 75 years, and this Democratic person won. So it's not insane that he then tried to accomplish it. He says to himself, okay, what we want is what Europe has. We want a single-payer system. That is never going to happen in the United States the way that it is. What I care about is, one way or the other, the tens of millions of Americans that are screwed without health care. I want them to have coverage. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use the Republicans' plan. Obamacare was Republican care, created in the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank, put into law by the Republicans' presidential nominee, Mitt Romney, when he was governor. This is a Republican universal health care plan. And someone like Barack Obama believes in democracy, believes in negotiation, believes in compromise. So I'm going to choose my opponent's healthcare system because at least people will get insured. And by the way, it is a capitalistic system. It created tens of millions of new customers for the insurance industry. Now again, if you're opposed to it, I believe you have a right to not just roll over, but the notion, the indignation that this is a pariah signifying the end of America is, I mean, what is it? Because you didn't feel that way when your political party came up with a plan. You have the American people, certainly the right-wing American public, okay, taking a stance of utter indignation at the expense of logic, at the expense of plain reality, amplified by Fox News, who is not using journalistic standards. MSNBC employs Joe Scarborough, the Republican congressman who voted to impeach Clinton. He has a show. They employ one or two other people as hosts of their own shows who were in the George W. Bush administration in top positions. So this is an allegedly left-wing news outlet that is giving top Republicans, career Republicans, their own shows. And these very Republicans who I don't agree, I'm sure, with what their policies were when they were in office, they agree with what I'm saying. Now you have at least about half of America galvanized under indignation and emotion at the expense of logic. The alternative universe would have been if Bill Clinton, instead of being entrapped and being impeached, the right wing said, okay, maybe we don't represent the values of America, or maybe we do. Let's get back, and through the means of democracy, let's show people that we do represent what's right, and let's get him next election. Obama's the president. Geez, man, look, we know this was our own plan, his healthcare system, but that was created in a think tank. That's what one governor put in place. That's not what we all believe. So we don't believe it, and no, we're not going to just roll over. Instead, he's not American. He's a Muslim. He's not legitimate. If you were a teenager before 9/11, okay, you grew up in a world where you were cognizant of your grandparents having sacrificed either in serving, either in dying, or serving at home in World War II, in which they literally saved half the world. That was a world where people were cognizant of an undetermined outcome and prevailed, creating a different world order of more sustained peace and prosperity ever in history, led by America and America's allies. In the decade that followed World War II, if you were an immigrant, you likely were European, and you had firsthand sensory memories of when you didn't know if you were going to make it because of the circumstances of World War II. Or even after World War II, if you lived under communism, you know that you got out and had opportunity here and are living in a much more stable world order of peace and prosperity than before. Your children then, in America, were cognizant of their parents' sacrifices and triumphs, and benefited without having to sacrifice that much, other than having to be drafted to Vietnam bullshit war. But they had enough bandwidth to protest said war. They had enough bandwidth to protest and bring down, through the mechanisms of a free press and free speech, a president that did not believe in the Constitution, allowing for a more just society. Their children, my generation though, yes, we were cognizant of it. We lived with the people that did those things, our grandparents and our parents, but we now did not have to make any sacrifice whatsoever. You're already talking now about degrees removed from the reality of sacrifice, the reality of if you want freedom, you got to do something about it. Degrees removed from a cognizance of history and what is going on now in the world, my generation. So that if you came of age after 9/11, though, I imagine you don't know anything about any of that because you grew up in an America post 9/11 that largely has failed to successfully face its challenges. You don't know of an America that was fighting a just war. You don't know an America that allowed anyone with a full-time job to buy a house. What you grew up with is the proliferation of not just capitalism. Capitalism, if you're a left-winger in America who believes in communism and the fall of capitalism, what that means is you did not grow up in communism, most likely. Capitalism should be about fair competition. It should be about the citizen, the consumer benefiting some way. If you want something the highest quality, you got to pay more. If not, you have the choice to buy something of a little less quality, you pay less. But we have an ultra consumerism where it's not about competition. It's about Amazon and Apple, who, yes, of course I use, squeezing out the competition, even being able to sell things, certain products at a loss if it squeezes out the competition. So that now you have startups in Silicon Valley, let's say, whose goal is not to compete against these companies, but to be bought out by those companies. That is not healthy capitalism. But that is all fueled by our insistence on more. Mm-hmm. More. You combine that with the tendency of the modern American to never be satisfied with the products they already have, to never be satisfied with their physiological needs being on point. Combine that with the media, where now you're looking at something that allegedly is news, and it really is just the free speech of people expressing their emotional indignation at moderation, which was the politics of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. And George H.W. Bush. H.W., okay? And I don't care for him. And now it's in your pocket in a computer that you walk around with, and you're being inundated constantly with extremely brief, extremely shallow, but majorly proliferated amounts of information non-stop. And the question is, do you have the capacity, the experience, the temperament to take the time to process things? I was at ground zero on 9/11. I'm a New Yorker on 9/11. I'm an American on 9/11. How much of an effort, how much of an altruistic value system did I have to watch Colin Powell's argument before the UN to legitimize the Iraq War? It took about as much altruism and effort as for me to do what I'm doing right now, sitting on a couch watching television. Other than journalists or scholars, I am the only person I've ever met that has watched his big PowerPoint to the UN to justify the Iraq War. And when I watched it, I said, that's it. We just don't have that temperament anymore.